Welcome to The Blue Dot, Northern Kentucky's premier political podcast, brought to you by the Kenton County Democratic Executive Committee. Welcome to The Blue Dot podcast, where we shine a light on the voices shaping our communities. We're thrilled to see that so many passionate Kentuckians are stepping up to run for office, and this platform, our podcast, is here to amplify their vision and connect them with you.
That's right, Natalie. And today we're joined by William Compton, a Democratic candidate for U.S. House of Representatives for Kentucky's 2nd District. William is the chair of the Democratic Rural Council of Kentucky, a public school educator, and advocate for Medicare for all, education reform, and environmental sustainability. You hit all my favorites there, William. He's here today to talk about his vision for Kentucky and what drives his campaign.
Yeah, thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. So for our listeners who may not know you yet, can you share a little bit more about your background and what inspired you to make the leap from the classroom to Congress?
Of course. So I actually never thought I was going to go into politics. My focus going through college once I graduated in 2012 was to get into the classroom, to teach music, to inspire the youth like I was inspired when I was in school. So that was my primary focus. And then 2016 happened, and we saw the outcome of that race, and that started piquing my interest. I started paying more attention. And as I started having conversations with my students, I teach at the same school that I was a student as when I graduated in high school. I started realizing nothing was getting better for my students, for the community I grew up in, for the families that I had came back to teach and already called friends and built that relationship with over my entire lifetime. Nothing has gotten better for them. And that is why I'm running in this seat, because of my students in this community. And again, because nothing has gotten better for them. And in many cases, we're seeing where it's worse all across the board.
Yeah, that's. I was looking at some of your Instagram posts, William, earlier today, and you made that point that, you had seen some issues and challenges when you were in school, in high school, and et cetera, and then went off to college and came back and saw that those issues had not been resolved, and in some cases were even worse, and that was a motivating factor for you. I thought that was really interesting.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you're also the city commissioner right now from Plum Springs, Kentucky, which is right outside Bowling Green. Tell us a little bit about your city and the communities that are included in Congressional District 2. I believe it encompasses 20 counties. Is that correct?
It does, yes. So a little bit about Plum Springs. If you are driving down Louisville Road past the Corvette Museum, it's one of our small rural cities. We have about 550 residents per the last census. I moved out here in 2019, the year before COVID happened, and bought this house. Loved the rural vibe that this city had, but the accessibility to Bowling Green and to the more city amenities that we've seen there. And in 2020, of course, we were all cooped in our houses. We were all worried about COVID. I started asking, what is the city government in Plum Springs doing for me? What am I getting out of my tax dollars? I already went through one tax cycle of paying property taxes. So I called up our mayor at the time and I said, hey, when's your next meeting? I know that you've been virtual sometimes because of COVID. And this was about when we were getting back to in-person events. Was met with saying, well, it's on the website this time, 6:30, City Hall. So I said, cool. I showed up. Nobody showed up to our city meeting. Nobody was there. I was the only one in the parking lot. I emailed the mayor at the time, where were you all? You told me it was at this time, at this place. And the exact email response I got back from him was, well, are you stupid? We canceled the meeting. Why didn't you read that on the website? It was never posted on the website. And so that frustrated me beyond all possible belief. So the 2020 elections came up and I filed as a write-in candidate and got onto our city commission simply because that interaction with our mayor. And I've been on there ever since. It's been very rewarding being on here. He actually found our former mayor stole over $36,000 worth of taxpayer funds, and we held him accountable at the end of my first term. And we've been cleaning up this city ever since. Now, moving on to the congressional district, like you said, there's 20 counties in the district. 17 full counties, 3 partial counties, and it ranges anywhere from Warren County down here in Bowling Green. If you follow I-5, it shoots all the way up to Louisville and Jefferson County, where we have the uh, right-hand side of Jefferson County, anything on the right of the interstate. And then on the left-hand side, it shoots all the way up to Davis County, Owensboro, and then you include McLean County and Muhlenberg County in that as well. It's a pretty large district in the middle of the state, and it's been great visiting almost all of those counties so far. We've been to 18 of the 20 so far.
Oh, that's great.
That is a lot of ground to cover for sure. And I love your story about that grassroots involvement, why you wanted to get involved. And then you get in there and you're like, look at this mess. And then you did something about it. You actioned it. You cleaned it up. It's a really great story. But you'll be running against Brett Guthrie, who's held the seat since 2009. And I'm just curious to get your take on what specific priorities or policy approaches set you apart from him. I mean, I'm sure we can guess a lot of differences there, but
A
really,
couple.
yeah, I mean, easy to pick out some issues here. But how do they reflect the needs of Kentucky's second district and the differences between you and Mr. Guthrie?
So the biggest difference between my campaign and Congressman Brett Guthrie is the fact that I'm taking priority with everything that the people in the district are telling me they want me to fight for. So I'm speaking to the people. And what we've seen from Congressman Brett Guthrie is he is taking advice from the Washington insiders, the corporate donors that are funding his campaign, which that's where he gets the majority of the funding from. So that's the biggest difference between us. I'm fighting for, of course, affordable health care with Medicare for all. I have been a very vocal advocate for our medical marijuana that we've seen across the state, whereas Guthrie has not been such a big advocate for. And then, of course, common sense solutions to making sure that we can have affordable groceries, to making sure we can bring those prices down, and fighting for things like living wages for working people in both this district and across the country. Those are some big policy points that we differ on a whole lot. So I can go into more detail. I know later on we will hit some of those in detail, but those are just the highlights.
You had, speaking of the living wage, you had a great post where you kind of talked about a family of two having to work more than one job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs, which you mentioned several times in your posts and have talked about. You know, you shouldn't have to do that, be able to make ends meet and actually be able to save and have a good life. And you had some really good breakdowns of what actual hourly wage a family needs for a single family income, a single income, a double income, kids, no kids, and broke that all down. And it all kind of boiled down to $15 an hour as a minimum wage is really about the minimum that we should have we could really call a living wage. I thought that was really interesting the way you break that down. That, I think, is what people who are concerned about kitchen table topics can look at that and see, okay, he gets it. He understands that.
Yeah, and I get all of that information from MIT, a very reputable source. They have done studies time and time again, and they have a calculator that you can go and look for any city across the country, any county, even just the state. You can see where it breaks it down. Single parent home with 1 child, 2 children, 3 children, 2 parents both working, and all of this is on 40 hours a week, no vacation whatsoever throughout the year as well, which makes it even more unreasonable that we're seeing that no one can have any vacation and they still can't afford to make a living with $15 an hour or less than 15.
Yeah, I was not aware of that calculator. I'll have to check that out. You're also the chair of the Democratic Rural Council of Kentucky. You got a few things going on there. Very impressive. You've been deeply involved in shaping strategies for rural communities. And how has that experience influenced your campaign priorities? And what unique challenges do you see for rural Kentuckians that Congress needs to address?
So it has been rewarding being the chair of this council. I've been the chair since February. And in that capacity, we've actually been working to try and revitalize county parties that have died away over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And we started in February with about 30, gotten down to about 10 or 11 that are still a little inactive, but we've been doing that work. And that's allowed me to go both inside the district and outside of the congressional district, and speak to the rural people who we've never heard from in at least the last decade or more about what issues they're facing. And that's been shaping my policy with this campaign. Hearing what your neighbor down the street, what they're struggling with, hearing the issues that their cousin is facing down the street. And that's what has helped my campaign so much. And these people need a voice in Washington that will fight for that. And they haven't had anybody try and reach out. And like I said, in at least a decade, probably two or three. And
Right.
that's what I'm trying to do with this campaign. Be that person that reaches out, be that voice for them, fight to make their lives better because they've been neglected.
Yeah, and one of the segments we do on the Blue Dot is a "What's happening in your holler" edition. So we like to talk to
Love it.
leaders in the different counties to do exactly that, and especially in the rural counties to get their voices elevated so that, they can be heard because it's all about, again, this grassroots visibility. And I think that makes such a big difference. And what you're doing is exactly what's needed. I love how impactful you are. And we're also doing deep canvassing sessions up here in Northern Kentucky. And I'm sure that what we're hearing, exactly what we're hearing, there's probably some similar red thread through a lot of what you're hearing there. But talk to us about what are those kitchen table topics that you're hearing, especially in those rural communities. But of course, you spoke a little bit about what you're focusing on, but what are the people telling you? We're on the ground.
So the biggest issue that I'm seeing that's on everyone's mind right now is healthcare. And I mean,
Mm,
that's something that everybody's going to have to deal with at some point. A lot of people are scared with the rising healthcare prices. We're seeing people all across my district are getting letters talking about their health insurance is increasing, including my grandmother. She had Parkinson's. She had a stroke years ago. Her medicine's increasing.
yeah.
Her doctor visits are increasing. And she's not the only one across this district that's fighting that battle. So that's on the forefront of everyone's mind. That's the first issue that I always want to address. And that's the first issue I want to address in Washington. And my opponent, he is the reason these healthcare prices are rising with
Yeah.
the one big beautiful in quotations budget bill that he helped craft the Medicaid cuts in. So
Mhm.
that's the first issue that we're seeing everybody focusing on. And then, of course, the economy is always an issue on everyone's minds, more specifically, grocery store prices. I have been telling these people this story here the last couple days. Friday, I went to our priceless IGA, supposed to be one of the cheaper stores in our county. And I go and I look, and one of those Maxwell House coffees, it's about a little over a pound of Maxwell House coffee, almost $28 just for that coffee.
Wow.
And you look at some of the other brands, and they're not cheaper, a whole lot cheaper. Maybe a $3 or $4 cheaper, but that's insane to me. And I go to the grocery store and I come across a friend that I used to work at McDonald's with. Very conservative, big Trump supporter in all three elections. And her and I are having a conversation. She's telling me about all the medical care she's needing. And I'm telling her about the prices, and we're having that conversation. And her exact words were, well, I wish I could meet Mr. Trump right now because he doesn't have to worry about these prices. He gets everything handed to him, and I want to punch him in the face. Those were her exact words. And
Yeah.
she's not the only one. I've heard grumbles across everyone's worried
Mhm.
about paying for basic food. We
Yeah.
shouldn't have to worry about that. That should be something that we can have basic food all across our country, especially in the most wealthy nation in the world. And then we have parts of our district who don't even have clean drinking water. And that kind of goes into infrastructure. Edmonson County and Hart County that borders that, they haven't had clean water in at least 4 years or more when they took out the federal dam in this area. We're not
Mm.
hearing a lot of people talking about that. That is an issue that the water was so bad that students couldn't drink from the water fountain in that school, in their schools. I mean, why? Why can
Mhm.
we not fix that to ensure we at least have clean drinking water? We're seeing photos of clothes being stained where the water is so saturated with bleach. We're seeing households where bathtubs are completely black where the water's coming out. And that's one county over from me. That's right here at home. So those are the issues that when I'm talking to people that they're telling me we're facing these issues. And you would think that our representative would want to fix those. but he either doesn't know about them or knows about them and just doesn't care.
Yeah, I don't think they're priorities, obviously. Um, and it seems like just a few basic deliverables, fundamental deliverables that government should be able to provide. And we, just from your testimony right there of what you're seeing on the ground, we're currently not, we're not succeeding on hardly any of those. I do find it interesting, and Natalie and I have spoken a lot and spoken to some of the people we have on the pod about we feel the tide is turning a little bit about Trump's support, amongst the Trump voters. If you see the polling, and, you got to sometimes take some of the polling with a little bit of a grain of salt, but, people who voted for Trump are aggravated, and a lot of his voters feel betrayed. I mean, politics is polarizing enough as it is, but it seems like, it would have been prior to this harder to find issues you could work across the aisle that are bipartisan. But maybe with this trend towards, some Trump voters, some hardcore Republicans are starting to feel a little betrayed, or also starting to struggle with some of these basic issues, you could have some working across the aisle. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, and what are some of the key things that you think you could work with Republicans on?
Oh, I mean, when we win this election in 2026, it's going to send a clear message that we have to work together to fix these issues. And I think that this seat and many others will flip in the midterm election. And the Republicans that come out on the other side and are victorious will see smaller margins of victory. And they will be scared that they might lose their seat in the next election in 2028. So they're going to want to work across the aisle more. They're going to want to work to deliver to the people in their districts. And like you said, these should be deliverables that everybody in this country should have access to. And so why would we not work across to get this done? And I do think there's going to be room for that bipartisanship in the next Congress.
Yeah, and one of those issues, as you said, and one of the primary issues that you're hearing is on healthcare. And we've seen Republicans in Congress right now keep saying that we're not going to help, we're going to find our own plan, but they're not coming up with their own plan. And you support Medicare for all. Clearly, that would help impact your family and those of rural Kentucky. So talk to me a little bit about how you envision trying to get support for a Medicare for all program. And again, you'd have to work with Republicans, as you said.
Yeah, so I do want to take this as a caveat with this. Any plan that comes forward to help with healthcare, it's not going to be a snap of the finger, the plan's magically in place. It's going to take some time. But with Medicare for all, especially on the right side of the aisle, we've been seeing a lot of talk of being fiscally responsible, a lot of, especially with Doge at the start of the year. Medicare for all is proven by both conservative and more liberal studies that it is cheaper than our current healthcare system as a whole because of the reduced administrative burdens. Why would we not, as a country, go for the option that's going to help people and be cheaper for our country? That is the biggest selling point, especially for the conservative side of the aisle. You can be fiscally responsible and provide this to the people in your district that will help them. So why do we not take that opportunity?
It's a really good point.
And I think that's what I can't remember the exact number, but 34 of the top industrial countries in the world were the only one that does not have, a universal health care. So just look to all your neighbors who are proving that it works. If that's not enough to at least to make us, start to look into how can we create this and how can we implement this on our own. I mean, we're crazy to ignore that. Yeah, and then as a teacher, you've seen many of the challenges firsthand, as we mentioned, like when you went back to school after being there and seeing that some things hadn't changed and many things had even gotten worse. What are your ideas and plans for, fixing education and, improving testing and all the other aspects of that?
So first and foremost, we cannot expect children to be able to go into a school building and learn the material they need to learn when they come in hungry, when they can't get food during the day because we're charging them for lunch. And then when they feel unsafe, we cannot expect them. Those basic needs have to be met before any learning can first take place. So I would want to present legislation that would not only ensure every one of our students across the nation gets food for breakfast and lunch when they come into the building, but also make sure that our buildings are modernized to where they're safe, they're not falling apart. I mean, a couple years ago, we had an elementary school here in my county that in one of the bathrooms, there was only one working stall out of five. We need to invest into those buildings for those kids to have what they need. I think that's number one. Number two, we need to make sure to address it's lightened up a little bit, but we're still seeing a teacher shortage, and especially in our rural areas. So we need to provide incentives for teachers to be in these rural areas to teach these students so they can have as much of an opportunity as every other student across the country. We need to make sure that we support our students with special education needs. We've seen this administration completely gut that department in the special education department. But those kids deserve that opportunity just as much as anybody else. Provide the funding, provide the resources, provide the educators with the resources to make sure that our students in the special education classrooms have everything they need to succeed to their highest potential. And then with regards to testing, I understand why we have end of the year testing. We need to see where the students are, but it doesn't need to be tied to federal funding your test scores. I've been playing around with a whole bunch of different ideas on how we can incentivize families to do good on state testing and to incentivize our students. But the bottom line is it doesn't need to be tied to federal funding.
Yeah.
Still do it, so we can see what we need to improve upon next year, to see where our students are lacking, to fix where those gaps are in the learning, but not make it as high stakes as it is right now. I mean, every year during state testing, it's like almost like you're going into Fort Knox in every school building. And because of the high stakes we've seen over the years, teachers are having to do shady things
Hmm.
in some areas just so they can either keep a job or the school gets the funding they need.
Mm.
We have the
Yes.
resources to fund our schools, regardless of what that state test says.
Yeah, that's
And
that's
then I
that's
can,
flawed. That's flawed logic there.
yes,
It encourages, improper behavior.
exactly. And so I could speak about issues with education and how to fix them. I could speak about them for days and days because I live them. I see them every day. So, but those are just a few quick points.
Yeah, a lot of what you said about education is rooted in infrastructure. Getting a,
Hmm.
a building that's not falling down and giving kids to have food and clean water. I mean, these are basic
Right.
necessities. So it sounds like infrastructure there is really, really important. And I think all of that then is tied to job growth. So tell me a little bit about what you would do or how you see you could help build infrastructure, thus leading to job growth in your district there.
So with job growth, I'm gonna kind of combine it a little bit with clean energy. I truly believe that if we promote clean energy, I know we're seeing some pushback, but we're also seeing some push forward on solar panel farms here in my district. If we promote those clean energy jobs, especially on the coal fields that have died away, but we can't farm on that land, then we can start revitalizing some of these communities that had these jobs when coal was big in that area and bring in more employment for those areas, especially our rural areas. That's one way that I think we can start upping employment all across rural Kentucky and across our country. And then that also addresses the clean energy needs we need
Yeah.
to where we can start working to fix climate change and we can start working to be more energy independent. And we don't have to worry about gas from other countries because we have this clean energy over here. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand working together, if that makes sense.
Absolutely makes
Oh, it
sense.
definitely does. It's a good idea. That some of the lands that are already not really productive or useful because, for instance, the coal mining, to see if those would actually be good for the solar farms, because we've talked to people who are concerned about the amount of land that it takes, and that is that use the best usage for it. But if it's land that we could figure out and isolate those parcels of land that really aren't suitable for anything else, that might be a real win-win.
And it doesn't just have to be solar. We actually are
Hmm.
seeing some wind energy turbines
Hmm.
being proposed here in this district. And you would think Kentucky, Why would we want wind energy farms in Kentucky? Well, look at the weather. It's windy almost every day here now. So it would be perfect. And those are just the two that we see now. If we invest in innovation, what's to say that we can't find something even cleaner that will help us so much more efficiently in the future if we invest in that
Mhm.
innovation to try and find that?
Yeah. So, William, what's something about you that voters might be surprised to learn? Let's peel back the onion. What do you got inside there?
Well, I'm a pretty boring person outside of politics.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the biggest thing about me is I sing in my car when I'm going from place to place. I like to, I tap on things. I was a percussionist in high school. So I like tap on walls, I tap on doors, I tap on all sorts of things. Blessed my family, they get so mad at me because I stop tapping. Sorry. But when I do have free time, I do like to bake. I love baking
Oh,
cheesecakes. I
okay.
love baking macarons. I love just baking in general. Sometimes it doesn't come out the best, and I have to retry, but I do love baking.
So, are you a fan of like the British or the American Bake Off shows?
Oh yes, I love it. If I could be one person, I would love to meet Paul Hollywood and just
Oh,
get his
yeah.
handshake. I would have to get better at baking to get that handshake, but I would love to meet him.
That's funny. Yeah, we love those shows.
The British baking show is hysterical. So yes, absolutely. And it's funny. Well, I play the drums. I play them poorly, and I cannot
That's right.
bake to save my life. I burn every. I can cook, but I cannot bake. It's just I'm doomed. Take some lessons from you. And to get to even know a little more about you, we do a little lightning round with all of our guests. If you're up for that, 5 rapid
Cool.
fire questions.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so you just talked a little bit about how you teach music. So I have to ask, and you sing in your car. So you do a little car
Yeah.
karaoke. What's your go-to karaoke song?
This is actually been more of a recent karaoke song because of my students last year, but it's Fireworks by Katy Perry.
Okay.
And
Good
a little
choice.
backstory, I did an incentive with my high school kids, and it was like a random spinning wheel, and it landed on, well, you have to do this, but Mr. Compton has to sing this karaoke song in front of you all. And the
Oh,
student who got that, he did his assignment, did his playing test, and he was like, "All right, Mr. Compton, I did it. So now you got to sing Fireworks by Katy Perry." I'm like, "Okay." And then ever since then, it's been kind of a staple that just started singing.
I bet they love it. How fun are you? That's awesome. All righty. I think we have a $1 billion Powerball coming up. What would be the first thing you'd do if you won that Powerball?
So this might be a little bit selfish of me and my family, but the first thing I would do is actually make sure my grandmother had everything she needed. I know it wouldn't be for a community or anything, but I want to make sure she's taken care of. And that means getting all of her medical bills paid, getting her housing that she can have someone watching her 24/7 and just taking care of her. She's been a big staple in my life. I just want to make sure that at the end of her life, she has everything she needs. That would be
Okay,
the first
Okay.
thing I would use it for.
that would be
Well, I think
money well spent.
that's very noble.
And what you had just answered that it may actually dovetail with the next question. And that was going to be, what is one rural Kentucky value you think the whole country could learn from?
Compassion. And again, I have a story for everything. Um, compassion, because in 2021, when we had the tornadoes that came through Bowling Green and of
Yeah.
course Maysville, I didn't see people standing on the streets going, "I'm a Democrat, I'm not going to help you. I'm a Republican, I'm not going to help you." I saw a community that said, "You have a tree on your house? Let me go get my chainsaw and let me go help you."
Yeah.
And so I think that that is a value that we could truly work on as a nation, is that compassion and that community. And I'm sorry if you see me like moving my arms down here. My dog just walked it.
You know what? I have a
No
cat that
problem.
runs around. Get it. We're all animal people here. All right. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
Teleportation, just
Yeah.
so I wouldn't have to pay gas money. Could just show up somewhere and be there. It would take that hour and a half long car rides, and it would make them a lot quicker.
And that
That would be
that would
sweet.
make campaigning a lot easier as well to get to that
Yeah.
gigantic district that you have to cover.
Yes, just show up on someone's doorstep to canvas.
Yes. All right, and here's a fun one to close us out with. What is your favorite holiday tradition?
So this one again goes back to when I was a kid and a very naive kid. For New Year's Eve, I spent a couple New Year's Eves with my grandmother, and of course, as a kid, we can't have any alcohol. So my grandmother would get that Welch's grape juice that looked like it was an alcohol bottle, and she would pour it for my sister and myself, and we would drink it watching the ball drop. We thought it was the greatest thing in the world because we still got to participate while the adults were having their adult time. And so it just became a staple that on New Year's Eve, I don't drink, but I'll get that Welch's grape juice in a bottle. I'll pour it and I'll drink it as the new year is coming in and still watch the ball drop.
Love it.
Oh, that's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for the lightning round. Appreciate that.
So, William, before we wrap up, where can listeners learn more about your campaign and get involved?
Yeah, so go to my website. That's the easiest way to learn more about my campaign, and I've made it as easy as possible for everybody. WilliamCompton.com. So just go there. You can find out all the information. All of my socials are pinned there. My Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of that. And if you want to help by donating, the donate button is there. It is a grassroots candidate. We really need some more help. If you also want to help by phone banking, by door knocking, there's also a volunteer sign-up sheet on there that you can fill out, and my campaign manager or myself will reach out to you after we get that form back.
All right. WilliamCompton.com, everybody. And William, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your vision for Kentucky. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great. I love it.
Thank you so much. Love your vision. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that is it for this candidate interview with William Compton. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss any of our upcoming podcasts or exclusive material like these candidate interviews. And don't forget, you can always join the conversation on our Facebook and Instagram pages or at bluedotpodcast.com. And as always, if you like listening, please consider donating to help fund it, which you can do by clicking on the donate link at bluedotpodcast.com. Until next time, stay curious. Keep the facts in focus. Never stop fighting for what matters. Peace out, everybody.